Yes, my name is Malcolm McCrillis, or better known as Mac McCrillis. I grew up in a Seventh-day Adventist pastor's home in my early days, and of course was taught their teachings, their doctrines as a young fellow. I went through their educational system and came out not knowing as much as I would have liked to known. I wished I had known then what I know now. Of course, we all do. But after I had graduated from Madison, I fell away for a certain amount of time, about 11 years. I went in the world. I thought maybe I could make my million. And I was very unhappy and trying to do that because I knew what was right. I knew what I had been taught. I always had a conscience that told me what I ought to be doing and wasn't doing. And went through a lot of struggles because of it. I got married while I was out of the church. And when I came back in the church, I lost my wife because she was not interested in spiritual things. And at the same time, I lost my 3 sons for a period of time. But eventually I got them back, and they lived with me for a good number of years until they graduated from school. As I developed in my learning about spiritual things, and had come back into the Adventist church, I was a little bit disappointed at the hypocrisy of the people, and it was a discouraging thing for me because I had a tendency to look at people instead of keeping my eyes on Christ. But the Vallejo Drive Church in Glendale, California, wanted to start a country living place outside of Los Angeles. And so with about 4 other families and a doctor that had found a piece of property, we moved out on this property, and we bought the property. And it was a training place for young men to learn the art of agriculture. We had about 33 acres of oranges, and I had my 3 boys at that time, and they loved it out there. I taught them how to work, and we were there on that property for a couple of years. We didn't get the help that we had been promised financially and had to sell the property, and we moved to another piece of property up in Central California and grew strawberry plants commercially. We had about 440 acres up there, and we really had a good time with that program also. But the owners of the property were in a lawsuit. None of them owned the property outright, and when the lawsuit was over, we had to move on, so we moved on. And after that, I took my 3 sons and moved to southern Georgia, near where my folks lived. And I took a job in the paint business. I had been painting for a number of years, off and on, after I retired from Lockheed Aircraft Corporation. And while at Wildwood Institute, I learned a number of things that concerned me also. I felt that there was a tendency to a works program rather than righteousness by faith. And I worked there for 5 years in their business office at the hospital, and then I left because my father had had a heart attack, and I needed to go tend to him because my mother was in Uchee Pines, which is a health institute, with osteoporosis. So while I was down there, I started my paint business again, and my boys went tree planting with some friends of theirs, and I went back up to the Chattanooga area and tried to find a place to live, could not find a place right off, so I went back to southern Georgia and got a place down there, and was down there for a number of years. Then while I was down there, I went to the 1985 General Conference session in New Orleans, and was there for a weekend, and on Sabbath afternoon I was up on the mezzanine just walking around. I saw a singles booth, and because my previous wife had divorced me and left me, I don't know if I said that before, but I had been probably single for about 11 years. And I knew the gal that was running the singles booth, and I went over to talk to her, and while I was speaking with her, she says, "Do you know that lady?" There was a lady walking behind me. I turned around and I said, "No, I don't." "Would you like to meet her?" And she put me on the spot, really. And it would have been incorrect for me to say, "Well, no, I don't want to meet her." So I said yes. And so she called this lady over and introduced us, and we talked for 5 or 6 minutes. And then she saw somebody that she knew and excused herself to go talk to these other people. But when we were talking, we were just sharing real quickly about our families and the children and things like that. And I went on into the meeting because one of my favorite ministers, Maury Benden, was speaking, and I wanted to hear him. And about 20 minutes later, I felt this tap on my shoulder, and it was this lady sitting behind me, and she says, "We weren't done talking yet, were we?" And I said, "Well, I guess not." And so 10 months later, I married this lady, and I'm married to her today. Her name is Sandy. She lived in Mobile, Alabama, so I moved from Georgia over to Mobile after our wedding. We got married in southern Georgia. My dad and her father, who were ministers, married us. And excuse me, I moved over to Mobile, Alabama. And we used to have a number of independent ministers come to town and hold meetings, and we went to several of them. And two of the fellows that came down told us about a controversy going on in the church, which I wasn't aware of, because I had never been a Trinitarian in my past, never was taught the Trinitarian doctrine, so I didn't know much about it. But these fellows were trying to teach me about the Holy Spirit, and they probably talked till midnight, and I couldn't figure out what they were trying to say because I believed everything they said. There was nothing different that I didn't believe. And their names were Doug Goslin and Fred Alleback, and a lot of you might know them. But from there, I began to study because I wasn't aware of the controversy over the Trinitarian doctrine, and that was 1987. And the next year, my wife and I moved up here to Roan Mountain, or not to Roan Mountain, but Blountville, Tennessee, and we were looking for a place to live, and we settled in Roan Mountain, Tennessee. But during that time, I began to look at this controversy about the Trinity. And I contacted some other people that knew more about it than I did, and found out what was going on, and started investigating the history of this whole thing. And I found out that the Seventh-day Adventist Church was teaching a Catholic doctrine. Of course, I never did want to be a Catholic. I wasn't taught to be a Catholic. So even though I wasn't a Trinitarian, it was very interesting to me to see exactly why they had accepted this doctrine. And most Adventists are not aware that this doctrine came in at the Dallas General Conference in 1980. It was put together, I think, by professors at Andrews University and introduced to the committee, and they accepted it. For what reason, I don't know, because it's so anti-God, and it's a denial of Jesus Christ. You can't find him there. So I have, excuse me, been studying that along the way. I'm pretty solid in my belief about this particular doctrine, and have been teaching it and preaching it ever since. We started having camp meetings here in Roan Mountain a number of years ago. I think it was 1983 or 1993 that we had our first camp meeting here. Had about 80 individuals that were interested. And it's grown since then. There are home churches around the country and out of the country that have been developed because of this teaching. They don't feel that they can go to the denominational organizational churches because they refuse to listen to us. And usually the worry in the Adventist church is that we don't believe in the Holy Spirit. That's their concern, but we believe in the Holy Spirit as much or more probably than they do, because we know that the Holy Spirit is the Spirit of the Father and of Christ, and that it is ministered to us by the angels, Hebrews chapter 1. Anyway, we've had a good time traveling around to different camp meetings and listening to other teachers and preachers preach this message. And my prayer is that everyone that hears it will accept it, because it's probably one of the most important doctrines central to our faith. The pioneers taught it. They believed it. The only one I think that really gave it up later in life was Prescott. I'm not sure why he did, but he did. And we would really like to be able to get a forum within the Adventist church, and so that they would listen to us. Nobody wants to listen to us. I think they're afraid of us. But we're Seventh-day Adventists just like them, and would like the fellowship. Well, I would say this, I'm pretty straightforward. If you want to stay with that doctrine, I would say probably that you should join the Catholic Church, because that's where it came from. That's the central doctrine of that church. And if you're adamant about holding on to that false doctrine, then it would be good probably for you to just go back to the Mother Church and enjoy their fellowship. But I would say to those who are interested, if you hear or see of people that you know of that are studying this or interested in it, make friends, and they can show you from the Bible the truth about this subject, and you can see it. God has His people. Be sensitive to those who are following Christ, and make friends, and they can help you understand this doctrine. After I had learned this doctrine, that one of the most important things I learned that I did not know and hadn't been taught in the Adventist system is that the Son was brought forth from the Father in heaven. When I heard that explained to me, it broke my heart. Actually, I realized, looking back, that I had always been a Seventh-day Adventist, but I was not a Christian, and I realized that because of my walk in the past, before I understood this doctrine. And that one thing brought me close to Jesus. It just changed my life when I understood that part of it. And might check it out for yourself and see how it changes your life.